Gabrielle, huge storm, accelerating east of Bermuda, but some issues over on the other side of the Atlantic with that. But back in the western Atlantic and portions of the main development region still, we've got additional issues, two of them, a couple of disturbances that we're watching with all kinds of funky things in the extended forecast models. So let's bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross. Bryan, we just got that 5 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. That one's on Gabrielle. I know for obvious reasons you're more curious about what's going on with the two disturbances. What's the latest thinking, as I wouldn't say that this afternoon's suite of forecast model runs necessarily provided any more clarity?
No, because the model runs, pick a model, any model, and it says one thing in one model run, then the next one it's something completely different, and then it's back and forth, and sometimes it's combining the systems, sometimes it's having one affect the other in some other kind of way. So we actually have four systems that are kind of working together in some fashion to create this forecast. So it's very much a dance out there, and who's going to be the winner and the loser, and who's going to push one the other way or whatever is very, very much up in the air. But let me just show you what is going on. That's the overview as you were showing. Gabrielle to the north, and then these two systems. All right, let's just start with Gabrielle. Gabrielle is speeding off to the east. It's still very strong, 130 mile an hour storm, a spectacular hurricane. You know, it's either no hurricanes or the pedal to the floor here this year, the way things are working. And it looks like when we go really close up here, as the sun is going down, we can start to see some dark areas kind of filtering in here. That's some dry air as we have kind of hostile upper-level winds beginning to push on it this way. And so it's going to start weakening as we move forward, and that's the National Hurricane Center forecast. There you see down from 130 now to 120, 110, 100, and just a steady, slow weakening as it moves into the eastern Atlantic. And when it's in the vicinity of the Azores, the odds are pretty high that this is going to be a hurricane. That's why they have a hurricane watch up for the islands, and the forecasts tend to be shifting south, unfortunately, which means more of the islands will be impacted by this storm, which is a pretty good-sized storm. It's not huge, but it's decent size. And then look at this. At the end of the track here, they've got a 40-mile-an-hour storm, not a tropical storm, but tropical storm force winds, into Portugal, and even now down farther south toward Lisbon is a possibility of being impacted by this, along with northwestern Spain. So anyway, unusual to say the least to get a storm from that direction there. Okay, the sun is going down here as well, but I left this on here because I wanted to see how big the system is. Crazy, about 600 miles across we measure. Hurricane Center says about 30-mile-an-hour winds with that, but a 90% chance of this developing a circulation, which means becoming a tropical depression. Now, there is still a lot of dry air and dust, but you can see the darker. There's a lot more dark in here. Notice rotating around? That's a sign that the system is moistening and pushing the dust away, and that's going to continue. That's what happened with Gabrielle. Gabrielle, for example, it did the same thing. And actually, going way back to Aaron, same kind of thing. Moisten, push the dust away, and then it was able to strengthen. There's the likely development area, but I'm telling you, these development areas have big question marks on them today. But let's just say that in this area somewhere, especially up in here, it's likely to develop into a depression. And then we get up into here, and now we get very iffy kind of a weather pattern, because up in this northern area, if it's in here, it's fairly close to whatever is going on over here. There's not much distance, and that distance, depending on the relative strength of any systems, it makes a difference on how they interact. All right, then let's take a look at 94L, and you can see it's this cluster of clouds kind of here, even though the center is about almost over the Virgin Islands Now, look at this close up, and you can see on the radar coming out of the Caribbean, there's where all the rain is on the back side of it. Imagine that now, kind of a comma draping down, because we'll see that more of that here in just a moment. And there's the potential development area the Hurricane Center has. The Bahamas very prominently in that. And the expectation is that this system is going to move up here, not develop here for the next couple days. Notice it's not a development area, but then get into the Bahamas and slowly move through the Bahamas. Now, does it intensify? Exactly what happens to it? Big question marks, but everybody in the Bahamas needs to stay on top of the latest forecasts here as we see how all these things develop. Okay, let's look at these two systems together. And then the question is, do they interact? Right now, the answer is no. Look at the wind flow. It goes up over this one, then comes down and goes up over that one. That's why you'll hear systems like this referred to as tropical waves, because it's like waves in the atmosphere. We just use the more generic term, a disturbance, which is what they are. Notice this one has this tail back here of moisture. Okay, and this one has dry air wrapping around it. So we have everything that we saw on the satellite is there in the model. Okay, now we move forward to tomorrow. The one on the right here kind of moves north, getting a little more moist. Notice there's less dry air related to the center of it. This one is pulling a lot of moisture over Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So flooding potential over the islands tomorrow. Be aware, it's been very wet there already, and so things are saturated. All right, that's tomorrow, watching up here. All right, now Thursday, here we are over the Bahamas. We're starting to see a circulation develop. This one is getting a circulation. They're still plenty far apart here, so no interaction at this point if they take these divergent paths. Some of the models have kind of kept them closer together and almost kind of merged them. The GFS model, for example, didn't allow them to separate, but most of the evidence says they will indeed be separate on Thursday. All right, now to Friday. Notice it didn't move very much here, so we still have a developing storm over the Bahamas. That's why I say this is in the southeastern Bahamas. That's why I say everybody in the Bahamas needs to watch this, because exactly where it will be, we don't know. Still plenty of distance between them. This one looks like it's organizing, maybe intensifying. All right, now to Saturday. Look at this. This is the European model. If this model is right, what's happening here is this system is getting stronger, and the flow is pushing like this and tending to want to hold this one back. We have an upper level low here that's wanting to move up. So we have these conflicting flows here that puts a big question mark over this system. But let's go with the European here on what happens. Now it begins to move north on Sunday, but notice they get closer. Now the influence, if this one is stronger, the influence of this one can be more, and we're not exactly sure what could happen. But this one could be intensifying, kind of balancing that out. If that were to happen, then this one might turn this way a bit more. This one might slow down a little bit more this way. So how close do they get? Look at that. Monday, they're even closer. So big question marks when we get to that time frame. Here are what the models say for that Monday time frame. And you can see the Google model all clustered down here. The European model is all over the place, from down here to way up there. And then they're pretty confident that this system here could be a threat to Bermuda. And yes, as we look downstream, some of the models have two very strong hurricanes. Some have one almost absorbing the other, and it's not clear exactly which one would necessarily do that. Anyway, all these different systems, including that low that's causing the very heavy rain in the middle of the country today that Ian's talking about in the severe weather, that will be part of the picture moving forward as well. So as it stands right now, just means that everybody from the Bahamas, well, including Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands actually, but the Bahamas, Florida, up the East Coast, just have to watch this moving forward. There's no focused threat zone at this point. And of course, in Bermuda as well, some of the models show two threats to Bermuda from these two systems. So it's really all over the place. It kind of reminds me of, shooting pool. Ian, and you do a break. You don't know where things are going.
Yeah, right.
Kind of what we have going on here right now.
That's it. We go from a bunch of nothing going on in the basin to now too many things, effectively, all which have impacts on one another in various ways, depending on which forecast model or run you looked at. So all of that to say, stay tuned. Bryan, we know that you'll be watching every single one of these cycles, and right here on Fox Weather, folks can come on back and get the latest information. That's our hurricane specialist, Bryan Norcross. Thank you.